In the vast stillness of Africa, where dusk dances with golden light and time seems to pause at the horizon, stories are not told in words. They are felt in footsteps, in wind, in silence. And some stories are carried by giants. This is the story of Tembo, an elephant who walked miles, not because he was lost, but because love had shown him the way. It began in violence. A dark night, a massacre, poachers, armed, ruthless, driven by greed that knew no boundaries. A family of elephants, once thunderous, proud, fell under a moonless sky. The matriarch, wise and strong, gunned down, her calves scattered, blood soaked into the soil. Among them, a tiny calf pressed against the unmoving body of his mother, nudging her, crying, not understanding that she would never rise again. That calf would have died by dawn. But as fate would have it, a ranger was near. Joseph, gray-bearded, slow-stepping, eyes weathered by years of patrol and heartbreak. He knew this land like the lines on his palms. He heard the distant shots, felt them more than heard them. By the time he arrived, the sun was rising, and the world smelled of death. He found the baby elephant standing alone, surrounded by silence and vultures. The moment Joseph stepped forward, the calf turned toward him. There was no rage, no retreat, only grief. Joseph whispered softly, "Easy now, I've got you." And the calf didn't move, didn't resist. Joseph placed a call for transport, but until it arrived, he stayed, sitting cross-legged beside the calf, a guardian to the broken. Back at the sanctuary, there was debate. What could they do with a wild orphan? He'd never accept humans. He wouldn't survive without his mother's milk. Elephants grieved deeply. They shut down, but Joseph believed. He named him Tembo, a simple word for elephant. But to Joseph, it meant more. It meant hope. Those first few weeks were a war of patience. Tembo wouldn't eat. He cried out at night, long, haunted wails that echoed through the camp. He slept curled in the far corner of the enclosure, eyes wide open, staring at nothing. Joseph tried everything. Milk from a bottle, warm blankets, familiar elephant sounds. Nothing worked. Until one night, Joseph entered the enclosure, sat quietly against the fence, and began to hum. It was a lullaby, old, African, his mother's song. Tembo didn't respond at first, but gradually his ears twitched, his breathing slowed, and he fell asleep. From then on, they were inseparable. Joseph didn't just feed him, he raised him. He taught Tembo how to use his trunk, how to dig for water when the river ran dry, how to avoid thorns, how to trust again. Tembo followed Joseph like a shadow. The other rangers laughed. "He thinks you're his father." Joseph smiled but never denied it. They had their routines. Morning patrols along the tree line, noon baths at the river, evenings by the baobab tree, sharing quiet as the sky turned orange. Sometimes Joseph would talk aloud, to himself, to the stars, to Tembo. He spoke of his wife, long gone but never forgotten, of his son, who had moved to the city and rarely called, of growing old. Tembo would stand beside him, his massive body still, as if holding space for every word. And in that silence, Joseph felt heard. Years passed. Tembo grew. He became majestic, tusks curling like ivory waves, shoulders high as a man's roof. He was free to leave, free to join the wild herds that passed through the sanctuary each season. But he stayed. No fence could hold him. Only love. Other elephants came and went. Some challenged him. Some followed him. But always, when dusk settled, Tembo returned to Joseph's hut, gently nudging the porch, waiting for his friend to emerge with tea in hand. It became a scene that defined the sanctuary. Tourists waited for it. Volunteers cried when they witnessed it. Man and elephant. No chains. No commands. Just presence. Joseph used to say, "He doesn't live with me. He lives because of me." They grew old together, one with wrinkles on his skin, one with them on his soul. And then one morning, Joseph didn't come out. The camp waited, then sent a ranger to check. Joseph was found still in his bed, peaceful, quiet, as if the earth had called him home gently. Like a whisper, the sanctuary was silent for days. And Tembo waited. He stood by the hut, didn't eat, didn't move, didn't cry, just waited. For 3 days, rangers tried to lead him away. They coaxed, they pleaded. Tembo didn't flinch. And then, on the 4th day, before dawn, he vanished. No one saw him go, but they found his tracks. Deep, wide, deliberate, heading toward the village where Joseph had grown up, a place Tembo had never been. But somehow he knew, 12 miles, through rivers, scrubland, hills. No map, no guide, only memory. The funeral had just begun when someone shouted, "Elephant, he's coming." Mourners turned. Out of the dusk came Tembo. His ears hung low, his step slow, his eyes wet. He didn't stop for fear, didn't hesitate for man. He walked to the grave, lowered his trunk, touched the mound of earth, and let out a sound, low, broken, ancient. Then he knelt, folded his mighty legs beneath him, and rested beside the grave. People cried, not because of the loss, but because of the love. Tembo stayed until night. No food, no movement. When the moon rose, he stood. He circled the grave once and left. No ranger could follow him. He disappeared into the bush. But that wasn't the end. 1 year later, exactly to the day, he returned. Same path, same grave, same silence. And every year after, villagers began preparing for him. They'd clear the path, leave water, place flowers on the grave. Children would whisper, "He's coming." And every time, Tembo came. Some say elephants never forget. But Tembo didn't come because he remembered. He came because he still loved. He came to grieve, to say hello, to say goodbye. Again and again, the sanctuary remains. New rangers have arrived, new calves rescued, new stories written. But every ranger knows, when Tembo walks, you let him be. They say he's slower now. He walks like the wind does, softly but with purpose. He doesn't trumpet much, doesn't join herds. He keeps to himself, except once a year, on the day Joseph died. A ranger once asked, "How does he remember the date?" Another replied, "Because love marks time better than any calendar." And now, Tembo is old. His steps are heavy, his eyes clouded, his tusks chipped, but his journey never stops. 12 miles, through scrub and dust, just to be near the one who loved him when no one else would. People often ask, why didn't he forget? But maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe the question is, how could he? Joseph gave him life, not just survival. Life. He didn't teach Tembo to be tame. He taught him to be whole. And in return, Tembo gave him what few ever receive, undying devotion. This story is not about a man who rescued an elephant. It's about an elephant who chose never to walk away from the one heart that saw him not as a beast, but as a being. Even now, as Tembo's time nears its own end, the villagers say they see him standing under the baobab tree, the same tree where Joseph once sat with his tin cup and quiet thoughts. Tembo stands there alone, but somehow not lonely. Perhaps, in his heart, Joseph is still beside him, because love like theirs doesn't die. It walks on, one quiet footstep at a time.